They came before sunrise, with fire in their eyes and death in their hands. In the kingdom of Ubuluku, no cry was more feared than the cry of two newborns. Twins were not seen as a blessing. They were a curse, a sign that the gods had turned their backs on the people. No mother dared speak of it. No father dared claim them. And when it happened, the drums of death would beat louder than the wails of innocence. Nkem knew this. She had heard the stories. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment she held her two children in trembling arms, knowing that to love them meant to defy everything her world believed. In a land where tradition was law and fear was worshipped, one woman's courage would awaken a truth long buried, that the real curse was not in the children, but in the lies that built the kingdom. The kingdom of Ubuluku stretched wide across the valley, cradled by thick forests and guarded by three mighty rivers whose waters never ceased to murmur the secrets of the ancestors. Its people walked barefoot across red earth, their feet hardened by generations of toil, their souls tethered to the land by the blood of custom and the breath of tradition. In Ubuluku, time moved to the rhythm of the drums, and nothing, not the sun, not the wind, not even death, could defy the laws of the elders. It was a kingdom as beautiful as it was brutal. At the heart of Ubuluku, rising like a stone fist from the earth, stood the shrine of Akpaka, an ancient altar blackened by generations of smoke, sacrifice, and sorrow. Here, the people gathered for rights, for justice, and for the maintenance of their sacred order. Here, traditions were etched deeper than the carvings on the shrine walls, older than memory, stronger than the cry of any child. Among those traditions was a law so feared that even whispering its truth could summon punishment. The law of the twins. Twins, the elders decreed, were not natural. Their birth was an abomination, a sign that the mother had laid with a spirit or an animal, or worse, that her womb had been cursed by the gods. No matter how the child laughed or how the mother wept, twins were never allowed to live. The law demanded their death for the safety of the land, the balance of the ancestors, and the survival of Ubuluku itself. No one knew who created the law, only that it had always been. It is written, the elders would say, though no scroll was ever shown. It was spoken by the gods, though no god ever came. Still, the people obeyed. Fear was a faithful teacher. Nkem was the daughter of a potter and the wife of a hunter. She lived in the southern quarter of Ubuluku, near the base of the hill where the yam fields began. She was known for her quiet strength, her laughter that rang like bells, and the way her eyes softened whenever she looked toward the sky. She had always wanted children. A house was only a house, she believed, until the sound of tiny feet gave it a heartbeat. When she finally conceived, after 2 years of prayer and herbs, the village women danced for her. The moon was full that night. Yuzo, her husband, had slaughtered a goat in thanksgiving and smeared her forehead with its blood. The village priest had declared her womb blessed. But as the moons passed and her belly grew large, too large, the whispers began. Her stomach is like a calabash of twins, one woman muttered at the well. I heard she dreams of rivers, another said. 2 rivers. Always 2. She should go to the shrine, said a third, crossing herself. Nkem heard them, but said nothing. She pressed her hands against her belly and spoke only to the life inside. If you are 2, she whispered, I will love you double. Her husband, Yuzo, noticed her silence growing heavier each day, like fruit ripening too fast. He asked her once, gently, if she had seen anything strange in her dreams. She shook her head and smiled, a lie that tasted bitter on her tongue. Yuzo was a good man, brave with a bow, careful with his words, but even he could not protect her from the kingdom. He feared the elders as every man did, especially Odom, the high elder, whose presence was like a storm cloud over a clear sky. Odom was tall, dry like a stalk of old sugarcane, and moved with the authority of someone who had never been questioned. His face was carved with age and cruelty, and his staff was made of wood said to be taken from the first shrine ever built. He did not speak often. When he did, it was law. As Nkem entered her final month, she no longer danced. Her feet swelled. Her back ached. But the dreams persisted. Always the same. 2 rivers, side by side, sometimes calm, sometimes raging, always rushing toward a great cliff. She began waking in the night, sweat pooling at the base of her spine, her hands clutching her belly as if to hold the dreams inside. Then came the night of pain. It started just after the sunset drums. Nkem was bent over the fire, stirring a pot of egusi soup, when the first wave of pain bent her in half. She gasped, gripping the wooden table. Yuzo ran to her side. She looked into his eyes and knew it was time. He ran for Ife, the village midwife, a woman older than time itself, whose fingers had delivered more babies than the stars had names. Ife came quickly, her back curved like a bow, her eyes sharp as flint. She said little, only motioned for water, Herb's cloth. The hut was filled with the scent of fire, fear, and waiting. Nkem screamed once, then bit down hard on her lip. She would not give the night the satisfaction of her voice. Her hands gripped the mat. Her eyes squeezed shut. Then came the first cry. High and piercing, like a flute cut through the night. Ife did not smile. She simply reached for a cloth and nodded. Nkem collapsed, tears slipping silently down her face. Then a second cry. Lower, softer, almost like a hum. But unmistakable. Ife's hands froze mid-motion. Her lips trembled. She did not need to speak. The silence that followed was heavier than the cries that came before. From somewhere outside, far away, a drum began to beat. One slow strike at a time. Not the rhythm of celebration. Not the call of gathering. The drum of death. Yuzo, standing just outside, dropped the pail he held. His face drained of all color. He had hoped. He had prayed. But the gods had not listened. Inside the hut, Nkem reached for her babies. They were so small. So warm. One had a mark on his shoulder, a birthmark shaped like a leaf. The other had eyes so wide, they seemed to hold the sky. I will not give them, she said. Her voice was raw. Fierce. Ife looked at her with tears brimming. They will come, Nkem. Before dawn. Then we will be gone before then, Nkem said, rising with the babies still slick in her arms. You do not know what you're saying. Where will you go? How will you survive? Anywhere, she said, where my children are not called curses. Ife hesitated, then reached beneath her wrapper and pulled out a bundle of dried herbs and cowrie shells. Take these. They will help. Hide in the forest by the river. There is a cave. If you know it, you will find shelter there. I will tell them you were too weak to survive the birth. Nkem nodded. No time for thank you. Only for running. She wrapped the babies close to her chest with a faded wrapper, gathered a gourd of water, and slipped into the darkness. The drum beat again. Somewhere a shadow stirred. Odom had already been informed. The night air in Ubuluku was cool and restless. Leaves whispered secrets above Nkem's head as she moved like a shadow through the underbrush, her feet bare, her wrapper clinging to her damp skin. Her newborns pressed tightly against her chest, their breathing fragile, uncertain. One whimpered softly. She hushed him with a trembling finger. The forest was not kind to the unprepared. It was alive in its own way, with the creaking of old trees, the rustle of unseen things, and the distant call of hyenas. But fear of the wild was nothing compared to the dread that gripped her soul. The fear of men with fire, of elders with staff and lies, of a law that punished life. She had crossed the far boundary of the village now, past the last yam field, and into the ancient path only used by hunters and rebels. The moon peeked through the canopy above, watching her flee like a disobedient daughter. Every sound made her flinch, the crack of a branch, the hoot of an owl, her own breath too loud. The cave was ahead. Ifeoma had not lied. Hidden behind a curtain of vines and nestled between two large stones, the cave yawned open like the mouth of a sleeping beast. Nkem pushed aside the growth and stepped in, the cool, damp air wrapping around her skin like a warning. But she was grateful for the darkness. It was safer than the light. She lay the babies down gently on a bed of leaves, whispering prayers from her mother's tongue. One reached for her finger, the other turned his face into her side. She could not yet name them. Names in Ubuluku were given in ceremonies she could never attend now. In secret, she called them Obina and Chisholm. My heart, she said to one. My comfort, to the other. Tears rolled down her face and fell on their cheeks. Back in the village, the sun had not yet risen, but the square was already beginning to stir. The death drum had not sounded by accident. A child had cried, too, they whispered. The elders would come soon. Odom would arrive with his staff, and with him, the executioner. Yuzo sat on the threshold of his hut, face buried in his palms. The mat inside still smelled of sweat and blood. The afterbirth had not been cleaned. Ife stood beside him, silent. She is gone, Yuzo finally asked. The midwife nodded. Into the forest. With the twins. Yuzo let out a slow breath, as if part of his soul had left with them. Then I have lost her. No, Ife said softly. You have given her a chance. They will search the forest. They will not find her. I told her the right path. I've seen more than these men think. Let them believe the old stories, but I remember what came before them." Yuzo turned to her, eyes wide. "Before the law?" Before he could ask more, the village gong sounded. Once, twice, thrice. Odom had arrived. Draped in red and gold, with white clay streaked across his face, Odom moved with the slowness of a predator, knowing the eyes of the village were upon him. He carried no sword. He needed none. His presence alone could break a man's resolve. Behind him walked two lesser elders, a young warrior and Ikeen, the village enforcer, tall, bald, and brutal, his hands forever stained with the past. Odom stood before Yuzo's hut and said nothing. Ife bowed deeply. Yuzo stood to meet him, but said no word. "She bore twins," Odom said at last. "Not a question, a decree." Yuzo nodded once, stiff as a tree. "Where are they?" "She fled," Ife said before Yuzo could speak. "She was weak but not broken. I turned for water and she was gone. Into the forest." Odom narrowed his eyes. "Then she has chosen death. Or life," Ife said under her breath. Odom turned sharply. "You forget your place, midwife. Or do you now question the gods? I only serve life, High Elder. And it is life that ran into the forest this night." Odom stepped forward slowly, examining the mat, the blood-stained cloth, the silence of the hut. He was not a fool. He could sense resistance blooming in the quiet. It was like mold, slow, silent, and dangerous. "Send scouts," he ordered Ikeen. "We search until the sun kisses the river." The enforcer nodded and disappeared into the trees. Odom turned to Yuzo. "If you see her again, you must do your duty. Do not let a woman's tears blind you to the danger she carries." 2 children, 2 shadows over Ubuluku. And with that, he was gone. In the cave, Nkem slept lightly, her body curled around her children. Hunger gnawed at her, but it was dull compared to the ache of uncertainty. How long could she stay here? Would the forest shield her, or betray her? Would her children grow to understand the world that had rejected them? She dreamed again, the rivers, always the rivers, but this time they did not rush to the cliff. They bent around it, flowed side by side into a broad plain of light. When she awoke, the sun had climbed high, and birds called out to each other in song. She nursed the babies as best she could, chewing bitter roots for strength. She would not go back. She would not give them. By the 3rd day, the searchers came close. She heard footsteps not far from the cave. Men muttering. A spear striking a tree trunk. A curse. But they did not find her. The gods, it seemed, had turned their faces just enough. Meanwhile, back in the village, the whispers had changed. Maybe the gods made a mistake. Maybe she was right to run. I heard Ife refused to kill them. Odom is hiding something. Why else did he order a search and not a sacrifice? The people were afraid, but now some were also curious. No calamity had struck. No fire had rained. The river still flowed. The crops remained green. Could it be that twins were not a curse? Odom sensed the shift. He tightened his grip on control, called for more rituals, demanded animal sacrifices to appease the angry spirits. But the spirits were silent. The only noise came from the people, their doubts, their questions, their memories. Ife began speaking to small groups of women in hushed tones. She told them stories older than the shrine. Stories her grandmother had told her, of a time when twins were revered, not feared. When they were said to be gifts of balance, one soul split into 2, to bring harmony. These stories had been buried. But like seeds in dry soil, they had waited for rain. One night, a boy no older than 10 stood before the shrine and asked aloud, "Why do the gods hate 2 children from the same womb?" The elders scolded him, but the damage was done. The people had begun to think. In the forest, Nkem began to heal. Her milk flowed. Her babies smiled. At night, she sang to them, old songs, soft and slow, songs that carried names and blessings she dared not speak aloud. She knew she could not live in hiding forever. But for now, she had done what no woman before her had dared. She had defied
days
death
turned
with
into
love.
weeks,
And
still
love,
the forest
though hunted,
held her
was
like a
not yet
secret.
defeated. Nkem had grown thin, her once round cheeks now hollowed by hunger, but her spirit remained unbroken. She scavenged with the instincts of a hunted animal, pulling roots from soft earth, plucking wild berries with cautious hands, catching rain in hollowed leaves. Sometimes she saw deer on the other side of the river, their sleek bodies silent and free. She envied them. The cave had become her world, dark, damp, but safe. She lined its corners with dry grasses and feathers she found near bird nests. She built a tiny fire at the mouth during cold nights, its smoke blending with the mist. Her sons, Obina and Chisholm, had survived the danger of those early days. They were growing stronger with each sunrise. Their eyes followed her now, and they smiled when she sang. It was Obina who cried louder, more demanding. Chisholm was quieter but observant. Even at this age, she saw something in their natures, one bold, one still. Two rivers, just as in her dreams. She told them stories at night, of kings and warriors, of gods who loved deeply and mothers who fought tigers with bare hands. Her voice echoed softly through the stone, chasing away the dark. But she knew she could not hide forever. Though the drums in the village had fallen silent, and the search parties no longer stalked the undergrowth near her cave, she knew Odom would never forget. He was not a man to leave loose threads. He was a man who finished what he began. Ubuluku had not fallen into ruin after her flight, and that, she sensed, disturbed the elders more than the twins themselves. If calamity had come, the people would have remained obedient. But nothing had happened. No plague, no blight, no flood. The gods, it seemed, were indifferent, or worse, silent. That silence was spreading. In the village, Ife was planting dangerous seeds. She met with women under the guise of midwifery lessons, but her words were sharper than needles. Before Odom, she said, before the shrine of Akpaka rose, there was a time when twins were not feared but honored. They were seen as a sign of divine favor. One soul split to do twice the work in the world. The women listened. They whispered. They began to remember grandmother's tales buried deep beneath generations of fear. What if the curse is not the twins, one of them asked, but the lie? Odom heard the whispers. He sent Ikeen to warn the midwife. You are disturbing the peace, Ikeen growled, his voice like dry gravel. I am disturbing a lie, she replied. He struck her once, leaving a red welt on her cheek. She did not flinch. Strike me again, she said, and the ancestors will remember your name. He did not strike again. Odom, furious at her defiance, convened a council in the square. The sun was high. The people gathered. The drums beat slow. Ubuluku, he bellowed, standing tall before the crowd, has strayed. He held aloft the staff of judgment, its top wrapped in white cloth and cowries, and the people fell to their knees. Twins are a curse, he continued. This is the law of the gods. This is the law that has protected us for centuries. And now false tongues seek to undo it. Midwives who forget their duty. Mothers who defy our gods. If we do not purge this sickness, we invite destruction. He turned to Ife, who stood in the crowd, blood still crusted on her cheek. You will cease your teachings, he said, or you will be burned with the next offering. The people gasped. Never had Odom threatened fire. It was a punishment reserved for the most grievous betrayals. But Ife raised her voice, old but unshaken. Let them burn me, she said. And when they do, my ashes will find your throat. Odom's lips tightened. He would need another way. In the forest, the nights had grown colder. Nkem shivered as she huddled close to her boys. Her bones ached. She was not sick, but she was not well either. Survival wore down even the strongest. She had gone days without real food. Her milk was drying. The boys were restless, crying louder than before. She had to make a choice. There was a small farming hamlet near the river. Not quite a village, more like a gathering of lonely huts. The people there were quiet and rarely visited the central market. Ubuluku saw them as simple, backward. But Nkem remembered once, as a child, how they had given her dried fish and honey during a long walk with her father. They had kind eyes. It was a risk, but risk was all she had left. That night, after feeding her boys the last of her soaked roots, she wrapped them tightly against her back and left the cave, heading east toward the river bend. It took hours. Her body screamed. Her feet bled. But by morning, she saw smoke curling from one of the huts. She stepped from the trees and called out. The old woman who answered the door stared at her in stunned silence. I need help, Nkem said. Please, they are my sons. The woman looked at the children, then at Nkem's sunken eyes, her shaking hands. You are the twin mother, the old woman whispered. Nkem's heart froze. She turned to run. But the woman reached out and took her arm. I will not betray you, she said. Come. There is food. Nkem stayed in the river hamlet for 7 days. They fed her from their small stores, let her bathe, and held the babies when her arms gave out. They were not loud people, nor did they speak of gods often. Their traditions were older still. They worshipped the river and the sky, and told stories not in words but in carvings. One night, the elder of the hamlet sat beside her fire and spoke. You are brave, he said, and foolish. But it is the brave and the foolish who make new things possible. Nkem smiled weakly. I don't want to make anything. I just want them to live. Sometimes that is the same thing. In Ubuluku, word of her survival reached the ears of Ubuluku once again. A merchant had passed through the river hamlet, and though they said nothing directly, they spoke of a woman with bright eyes and children with wide ones. Twin boys, he muttered carelessly. It was enough. Odom summoned Ikeen. Go, he said. Take 5 men. Burn the hamlet. Make it known, Ubuluku will not tolerate defiance. Ikeen nodded. By the time Nkem heard the warning, it was too late. A boy from the hamlet had spotted the soldiers an hour away and ran to tell her. The villagers begged her to flee, to take the boys and vanish. She hesitated. I can't run again, she said. You must, the elder insisted. But you must also stop. You cannot flee forever. At some point, you must fight. Nkem looked down at her sons. Obinna stared back with unblinking eyes. Chisholm gripped her finger tightly. She stood. I will return, she said. And into the forest she went once more, but not as a shadow this time. As a storm. Odom's warrior came with torches. There were 6 of them. Ikeen in front, towering, silent, his hand wrapped around the hilt of his curved blade. Behind him were 5 warriors in red tunics, their feet pounding the forest path, their eyes scanning for movement. Birds fled their passage. Trees trembled in their wake. When they reached the hamlet by the river, they found only stillness. The villagers had already vanished into the woods, scattered like leaves before a storm. Nkem was gone too, but not far. She crouched low on a ridge overlooking the hamlet, clutching Obinna and Chisholm to her chest. Her heart thundered. Her breath came in shallow bursts. Her whole body shook, not from fear, but from something deeper. Rage. Ikeen lit the first roof with his torch. The flame licked hungrily at the dried thatch, consuming it with a roar. One by one, the huts went up in fire, the smoke spiraling toward the sky like a plea. The forest echoed with the crackle of burning lives. They will think twice next time, Ikeen muttered. But even he noticed the silence. No cries. No wails. No resistance. The hamlet was already empty. Their warning had failed. They had struck fear, yes. But not obedience. And Nkem was watching. That night, she sat beneath a wide baobab tree and wept. Not just for the homes lost, but for the truth made clear. Odom would not stop until she was dead star. Until her sons were dust. He would burn the world to prove himself right. She would have to go back. Not to beg. To speak. To reveal. The truth was older than Odom. And it was time the people heard it again. In Ubuluku, the people stirred uneasily. The fire at the river hamlet had spread faster than expected, consuming more than it should have. The sky had darkened with smoke. Ash floated back into the village, black snow falling on children's heads. What wrong did they do? The people asked. They were quiet folk. Peaceful. They harbored her, others whispered. Then maybe she is not cursed, some dared say. Maybe she is chosen. Odom, growing desperate, increased his grip. More shrines were built. More rituals performed. He demanded goats and chickens, yams and cola. He forced the women to sing prayers at dawn, to swear again that twins were a blight. But no disasters came. The crops were good. The river clean. The sun rose as always. Odom's fear twisted inward. It was no longer about gods. It was about power. If the people no longer feared the curse, they would stop fearing him. And that could not be allowed. 3 nights later, Nkem returned to Ubuluku. She came not in hiding, but in full view. Wrapped in a white cloth, with her sons bound tightly to her back, she walked into the village square just before dawn, when the fires were low and the guards least watchful. She moved slowly, barefoot, her body lean and ghost-like. Her hair hung in long twists, her skin marked with forest ash. Her eyes, bright, defiant, locked on every person who emerged from their hut. One by one, doors opened. One by one, people stepped out. Ife was the first to reach her. She dropped to her knees and wept. You've returned, she whispered. Nkem nodded. It is time. The sun broke the horizon as a cry rang out. The twin mother walks in daylight. People rushed to the square. Men, women, elders, even children. And still Nkem stood. By mid-morning, the square was full. Then came Odom. He arrived flanked by guards, staff in hand, eyes blazing with fury. What is this madness? He bellowed. You dare bring this curse here again? You shame the gods. No, Nkem said, stepping forward. I shame only you. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Odom's face twisted. You defy the laws. I defy the lies. She stepped closer. Her sons stirred, sensing her strength. Tell them, Odom. Tell them why twins were declared cursed. Tell them how your father, in jealousy, murdered his own brother's sons, twins, and blamed the gods to cover his crime. Tell them how that lie became law. Tell them how you rose to power on the back of blood. Odom's hand gripped the staff so tightly his knuckles turned white. They will not believe you, he said, voice shaking. But the crowd was no longer his. Whispers spread like fire in dry grass. My grandmother told me the twins were once honored. The river people never feared them. Is it true? Could it be? Nkem raised her voice. Do I look cursed? She asked. Do my sons carry death? Or life? She unwrapped them from her back, lifted them up, one in each arm, and turned slowly in a full circle. The people gasped again, but this time, not from fear. Obina grinned, reaching for a bird overhead. Chisholm yawned. They were just children. Alive. Whole. Beautiful. And the people saw. Odom trembled. You speak blasphemy, he roared. No, Ife said, stepping forward. She speaks truth. Another woman joined her. Then another. Then a man. Soon the crowd surged behind Nkem. Odom tried to raise the staff, but no one bowed. Then Ikeen stepped forward. The enforcer. The killer. He stood silently for a long moment, eyes fixed on the twins. Then he dropped his spear. And knelt. Odom's mouth hung open. You fool, he whispered. You think they will protect you? You think this mob will last? The gods will punish you all. He raised the staff again, this time to strike. But before he could bring it down, Ife caught his wrist. The gods, she said, are watching. And they are silent no more. Odom struggled, but he was old, and Ife was not alone. Hands grabbed him, pulled him down. The staff fell, cracked on the stone, and broke. The people gasped. That moment, the breaking of the staff, would live forever in Ubuluku's history. It marked the end of the law, and the beginning of truth. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The shrine of Ukpaka was torn down. In its place, the people built a new shrine, a simple open-air space with stones for sitting and a single carved figure, a mother holding two children. They named it Ihioma, the good light. Ife was appointed the new high elder, the first woman ever to hold the post. Her voice became law, her counsel sacred. Nkem remained in the village, no longer in hiding, but in honor. She walked freely, her sons always with her. The children of Ubuluku grew up hearing her name not with fear, but with reverence. And as for Odom, he was exiled, sent to live in the mountains alone. Some say he died there. Others say he wandered into the jungle and was never seen again. No one mourned him. The fear was gone, and in its place bloomed something new. Hope. But far beyond Ubuluku, in villages untouched by truth, the old belief still lingered. Whispers still spread that twins were cursed. And so Nkem knew her work was not done. One day, when Obina and Chisholm were old enough, they too would walk into the villages. Not in fear, but in fire. And truth would walk with them. The kingdom of Ubuluku did not change overnight. Though the shrine had fallen, and the law against twins had been broken in full view of the people, years of fear could not be swept away with one act of defiance. Fear, after all, was not just a rule, it had become a tradition. And traditions, even poisonous ones, have deep roots. But truth is a patient seed. And once planted, it grows. The morning after Odom's exile, the village awoke to a strange, quiet kind of joy. There was no festival, no official celebration. Yet the people moved differently. Women sang while pounding yam. Men lingered in conversation beneath palm trees. Children played without being hushed. And at the heart of it all was Nkem. She sat outside her father's old compound, now restored and swept clean, as the village elders came to her, one by one. Not in judgment this time, but in apology. They brought offerings, calabashes of palm wine, smoked fish, cola nuts wrapped in banana leaves. Nkem, they said, kneeling before her, we were blind. Some wept as they confessed the roles they had played in her suffering. But Nkem never turned them away. She received them with quiet strength. The gods saw, she told them. Let us not walk backward. Her words became proverbs, repeated in the market, passed on to children. And slowly, the new Ubuluku began to take form. But outside the village, storms were gathering. Not all had accepted the change. In the hill village of Enarainta, 2 days' walk north, Chief Benifo gathered his warriors under the full moon. You have heard, he said, voice bitter, that Ubuluku now honors abominations. They lift up the cursed children and build shrines to their shame. His men growled in agreement. Many of them had lost kin to the law of twins. Not through death, but through banishment, through shame. And now, the law had been reversed, and their griefs made pointless. We cannot allow this rebellion to spread, Benifo said. If Ubuluku defies the gods without punishment, others will follow. What do we do? One of the warriors asked. Benifo's eyes gleamed. We cut off the head. Burn the root. It was the first time in memory that twins could be seen openly among the villagers. Two girls, barely walking, toddled around their mother in the yam fields. A set of boy-girl twins, older, helped carry cassava. Their presence was a quiet revolution, their laughter a challenge to centuries of fear. Nkem's sons, Obina and Chisholm, had become the village's joy. People brought them gifts, carved toys, woven sandals, sweetened tiger nuts. Obina, always bold, ran through the streets pretending to be a hunter. Chisholm, quieter, watched everything and said little. The people began calling them Iachi na Ihu, light and vision. Nkem walked among her people with pride. She had become more than a mother. She was now a symbol, a living reminder of what courage could restore. Still, she did not forget the danger. The old gods do not vanish, she told Ife. They retreat. They wait. And she was right. One night, the forest dogs howled long and loud. Then silence. Then smoke. The first screams came just before dawn. A group of warriors from Enarinta, faces painted with chalk and charcoal, stormed the outer compound of Ubuluku. They set fire to yam barns, slaughtered livestock, and tore down the newly built shrine of Ihioma. But they didn't kill indiscriminately. They came for one purpose, to capture the twin mother and her sons. Nkem awoke to the sound of shouting. Her compound was already surrounded. She snatched up Obina and Chisholm, bundled them into her arms, and ran toward the back wall. Flames licked at the edge of her roof. Her breath caught in her chest. Through the cassava grove, someone shouted. It was Ikin. He had returned, not as an enforcer, but as a protector. Go! I will hold them. Nkem didn't hesitate. She fled through the narrow back path, the boys clutched to her chest. Behind her, the village rose. Men fought back with machetes and firewood clubs. Women threw stones. Even children screamed war cries. It was not the Ubuluku of old. It was a people reborn. By midday, the raiders had been driven out. 3 villagers were dead. One of the twin mothers, a girl named Amaka, was taken. The shrine lay in ruin once more. Nkem, covered in soot and tears, returned to the village with her sons alive, but something inside her had shifted. She no longer wanted to protect. She wanted to resist. That evening, a gathering was called. Under the great Irako tree, the elders sat in a circle, torches casting long shadows. The attack will not be the last, Ikin said, his eyes dark. There are others like Chief Benifo. They will not let us live in peace. Then we must leave, one elder whispered. Go where they cannot find us. No, Nkem said. We cannot run every time the world refuses to change. If we do, we leave others behind. There are twin mothers in other villages, living in fear, hiding their children, waiting to see what Ubuluku becomes. Ife stood. Then let them see strength. The crowd murmured in agreement. What do you suggest? Another elder asked. Nkem's voice was clear. We build a place of refuge. Not just for us, but for any mother, any child cursed by ignorance. A place where they can be safe and free and whole. Ikin nodded. A new sanctuary. A second Ubuluku, Ife added. No, Nkem corrected. A greater one. Not a kingdom of blood or fear, but of healing. There was silence. Then, slowly, one by one, the elders agreed. They would build it. And defend it. Not just for themselves, but for all who would come. Construction began before the next full moon. Downstream, where the river widened and the land was fertile, a new settlement rose. **Ogadama***. May it be well. Mud houses. A gathering square. A carved pole in the center bearing the image of a twin eagle. 2 heads, 1 body. Refugees came from distant villages. Some walked days to reach the sanctuary. Women with newborns wrapped tight. Fathers carrying daughters on their shoulders. Old women guiding the blind. Each arrival brought new pain. New stories of persecution. But also new strength. In Ogadama, they found rest. And purpose. Obina and Chisholm grew alongside the sanctuary. By the time they turned 5, they could already recite their mother's words like scripture. Obina declared he would be a hunter, not of animals, but of truth. Chisholm said little, but carved the twin eagle in every piece of wood he could find. They were children, but also seeds, and the future was growing. But word of Ogadama spread, and not everyone welcomed it. In the capital of Umudike, where the high priests of the old gods still ruled, the Council of 7 met under moonless sky. This rebellion must end, the head priest spat. They mock the gods, another agreed. They break the laws. They inspire others. The priests sat in silence, weighed down by fear disguised as righteousness. Finally, the eldest among them, a frail man with sunken eyes, spoke. Then let the gods answer. Send a sign. A famine. A sickness. Something. But the gods remained silent, and the world moved on. Back in Ogadama, Nkem walked through the streets of the village she had birthed, her sons by her side. She watched the people labor, laugh, and live. No longer in fear. No longer in hiding. But her heart remained vigilant. The old world is dying, she told Ife. But it is not yet dead. It will fight to live. Then we will fight harder, the elder replied. And so the twin mother, once hunted, now led a movement. She had become more than legend. She had become revolution. In the stillness of night, the drums began. They came from the hills. Low, slow, rhythmic, like the heartbeat of something ancient. The people of Ogadama paused. Fires dimmed. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the children went silent, sensing that something old had awakened. Nkem stood outside her compound, staring into the darkness beyond the river. The sound of the drums grew louder, not in volume, but in presence. They filled the air like fog, creeping into bones, summoning something long buried. They are calling on the gods, she murmured. Ikeen stepped up beside her, his spear resting across his shoulder. Which ones? The ones we stopped fearing, she replied. That night, no one slept. By dawn, word arrived. A messenger from Umudike, gaunt and soaked with sweat, was brought before the elders of Ogadama. His face bore the black and white ash of a temple servant. His knees buckled as he fell to the ground. They are summoning the judgment, he gasped. What judgment? Ife asked. The oracle of Ani has spoken. The gods demand balance. Ubuluku and Ogadama have tipped the scales. A reckoning is coming. The elders glanced at one another. Nkem frowned. What does it mean? The messenger shook his head. They're sending the shadow dancers. The name struck the elders like thunder. Even Ikeen's eyes darkened. That's not a threat, he said. That's war. The shadow dancers were no mere warriors. They were assassins, mystics, killers trained from birth to be unseen. They moved with silence and struck like spirits. Every kingdom had heard of them, but few had survived their wrath. They will not come as soldiers, Ikeen said. They will come as wind, and we won't see them until it's too late. We must evacuate, one elder urged. Scatter the people. Hide the children. No, Nkem said. That's what they want. Chaos. Fear. Submission. Then what do we do? Nkem's eyes turned to her sons, who stood not far, watching with wide but fearless eyes. We prepare. In the weeks that followed, Ogadama transformed from a sanctuary into a fortress of spirit. No walls were built. Nkem refused to turn the village into a prison. But the people trained. Ikeen taught the men how to fight with more than spears, how to listen for footsteps, how to read the silence, how to move with the rhythm of the earth. The women practiced together, forming a protective circle of mothers and daughters. They sang songs that turned into codes, chants that could raise alarm across the village in seconds. Ife led the spiritual preparation. She reopened the shrine of Ihioma and rededicated it, not as a temple of ritual sacrifice, but as a beacon of resistance. Children came to sit around her and hear the old stories retold with new meaning. Nkem remained at the center. Every day, she walked among her people. She listened, encouraged, reminded. This fight is not just for us, she told them. It is for those who will come after us. The unborn. The unseen. If we win, they will never have to hide. And so the people waited. Not in fear, but in readiness. The shadow dancers came with the rain. Not through the main roads or forests, but through dreams. The first to fall was a farmer, found lifeless at his yam mound. No wound upon him, but his face frozen in terror. Then a mother vanished from her sleeping mat, her baby still swaddled beside her. Only a single black feather left in her place. Nkem knew this was the beginning. They will try to break us before we see them, she said. but we are not the same people we were. Each loss was met not with silence, but ritual. The villagers gathered at dawn, sang the names of the fallen, and swore their stories would not die. Obinna and Chisholm began training with Ikeen. Though young, their bond was strong. Obinna had the speed and daring of a fire spirit. Chisholm had the eyes of an eagle and the patience of stone. Together, they could read each other's minds, move as one. They are not just twins, Ikeen told Nkem. They are warriors. She said nothing, but her heart swelled with equal parts pride and dread. They were becoming what the world needed, but not what a mother would wish. One night, Nkem had a dream. She stood in the shrine of Ihioma, but the walls had fallen away. The sky above her was blood-red, and the earth beneath her feet pulsed like a living thing. Before her stood a figure cloaked in smoke, faceless, voiceless. She tried to speak, but her mouth would not open. Then the figure extended a hand, and in its palm lay a mask. The same mask worn by the shadow dancers. Nkem woke in sweat, and knew the enemy was already inside the village. That day, she called a secret council. Only Ife, Ikeen, and 3 trusted others were present. "There is a traitor," she said. They looked at one another uneasily. "How can you be sure?" Ife asked. "Because they've never attacked randomly. Every victim was isolated, alone, or vulnerable. Someone is marking them," Ikeen said grimly. "We must find the mask," Nkem said. They formed a plan. Not to confront, but to observe. To watch the watchers. To find the crack in the mask. For 10 days, they moved in silence, weaving through the village, pretending not to look. And then they saw it. A young boy, barely 14, always near the deaths. Always present at the rituals. Quiet. Too quiet. His name was Yuzo. Orphaned. Alone. Easily overlooked. Until they followed him into the forest one night, and saw him kneeling before a shadow. A real shadow dancer. Not a ghost, but a man cloaked in black, his body painted with ash and blood. He passed Yuzo a feather, and vanished. Ikeen moved before Nkem could stop him. He leapt from the trees and caught Yuzo by the neck, dragging him into the clearing. The boy screamed, fought, bit and kicked, but Ikeen held fast. "We should kill him," Ikeen growled. "No," Nkem said. "We listen." Under questioning, Yuzo broke. "I didn't know what I was doing," he cried. "They told me if I gave them names, they'd make me a priest. They'd give me a family again." His voice cracked with desperation. "They said you were liars, that the gods were angry. Did you see the gods?" Nkem asked. "No," he whispered. "Then see now." She turned him toward the village, toward the people gathered around the fire, sharing food, laughter, stories. Unafraid. "Whole. Those are your people," she said. "Not the ones in shadows." Yuzo broke down, and Nkem did something that shocked even Ikeen. She forgave him. Not for his sake, but for what it would teach others. That even in war, humanity must not be lost. That forgiveness could be a weapon, too. The shadow dancers did not stop. But now they were hunted. Yuzo became their mirror, revealing their patterns, their hiding places. Ikeen and a new corps of night watchers struck back. Not with vengeance, but defense. Traps were laid. Alarms were devised. The people of Ogadama became sharp. And then the killing stopped. Not because the enemy relented, but because they failed. The people no longer feared death more than silence. The echo of the old gods grew faint, and a new rhythm took its place. Drums still beat in the hills, but now the people danced to their own. The river had always been the heart of Ubuluku. It carved the land, carried the seasons, and whispered ancient secrets. To the people of Ogadama, it was more than water. It was a voice, a guide, and a witness. But now the river spoke in riddles. The rains had been late that year. The sky, once heavy with promise, stayed stubbornly clear. The sun scorched the earth, turning the green cassava fields into cracked brown. Yams wilted in their mounds. The air tasted dry and bitter. Nkem sat by the riverbank, dipping her fingers into the cool water. Her sons, Obinna and Chisholm, played nearby, throwing stones and watching the ripples spread. "The river is thirsty," Nkem said softly. Obinna looked up. "Will it come back?" "I don't know," she admitted. This drought was unlike any they had faced. The old priests in Umudike whispered that the gods were angry, that the breaking of the ancient law, the honoring of twins, had upset the balance. The old gods demanded sacrifice to restore favor. But Nkem saw something else. She saw fear. Fear twisting into power. And power wanting control. Ife arrived at the riverbank just as the sun dipped low. "The council is meeting tonight," she said. Her face was drawn and pale. Nkem nodded. "We must speak of the river. The elders say the famine will break if we return to the old ways. Offer blood. Offer blood," Nkem repeated bitterly. "Sacrifice children like before?" Ife's eyes filled with tears. "It's what they believe." Nkem took a deep breath. "Then we must show them another path." That night, beneath the great Irako tree in Ogadama's gathering square, the village elders sat in a circle. Faces were weary from the drought, eyes shadowed by worry. "We cannot live like this," one elder said. "Our crops die. Our children cry for water. The gods will punish us if we do not return to tradition." "Tradition has failed us before," Nkem replied. "If we sacrifice children again, what have we learned?" Murmurs rose. Ife stood, her voice steady. "The gods are not angry. The world changes. The river changes. We must listen, not punish." "But the old priests say the twins brought this curse," another elder said harshly. "If we allow them to live, our kingdom will fall." Nkem met his gaze. "Our kingdom is already falling because of fear and hatred, but it can rise because of love and courage." The council was divided. Days passed with no rain. The people grew desperate. One morning, Obina did not come home. Nkem's heart shattered. They found him at the river's edge, staring into the water, silent. "He was talking to the river," Chisholm said quietly. Nkem took her son's hand and followed Obina's gaze. The water shimmered with something strange, a flicker of light beneath the surface, like the pulse of a hidden world. That night, Nkem dreamed again. This time, the river spoke clearly. She stood on the riverbank, watching the water swirl. A voice rose from the depths, soft, ancient, full of sorrow. "You seek to understand," it said, "but you must first remember." The river showed her visions. A time before Ubuluku was a kingdom, a time when all lived in harmony with the land and water, when twins were not feared but celebrated as gifts of balance and renewal. She saw twin spirits dancing on the water's surface, weaving light into dark, life into death, joy into sorrow. And then she saw the breaking, the moment when jealousy poisoned hearts, when fear drove mothers to hide their children, when laws were made to kill the innocent. The river's voice grew strong. "Your people must heal the wounds of the past. Only then will the river flow again." Nkem woke with tears. The next morning, she called the village to the river. "I have seen the river's truth," she told them. "We cannot wait for the old gods to forgive us. We must forgive ourselves." Some whispered. Some doubted. But Nkem's voice did not waver. "We will hold a ceremony, not of blood but of water. A cleansing. A promise." The villagers gathered in the shallow river, hands joined, hearts open. Ife led the prayer. "Spirit of water, hear us now. We honor your gifts. We ask for your mercy. Wash away the pain and fear. Bring life to our land once more." One by one, they stepped into the cool flow, letting the water touch their feet, their hands, their faces. The river did not roar, but it did not refuse. That night, the rains came. First a drizzle, then a downpour. The people danced in the mud, faces turned upward, mouths open to the sky. Nkem watched Obina and Chisholm run through puddles, their laughter like a song. The drought was breaking, but Nkem knew the battle was not over. In the shadows, far away, the priests of Yumidike seethed. The head priest, his robes heavy with rain, clenched his fists. "The river has spoken," he growled. "But the gods are not silent." He turned to his followers. "We must send a messenger." Days later, a stranger arrived in Ogadama. Clad in dark cloth, his face hidden beneath a hood. He carried a staff carved with twisted serpents and eyes. He claimed to be a traveler seeking refuge. Nkem met him at the village gate. "What brings you to Ogadama?" she asked. "Seeking truth," he replied, voice low and smooth. She studied him. There was something in his gaze, old knowledge and new cunning. "We honor truth here," she said, "but we do not welcome lies." The stranger smiled faintly. "Then perhaps we shall learn from each other." That night, under the stars, the stranger spoke to the elders. He told tales of distant lands, of gods forgotten and remembered, of powers beyond the river. Some listened with wonder, others with suspicion. Nkem watched from afar. She knew the stranger was no ordinary man. But was he friend or foe? The days grew warmer. The river flowed fuller. Ogadama thrived. But tension simmered beneath the surface. Whispers spread of a new threat, one that could undo all they had built. And Nkem's sons, now taller and stronger, felt the weight of the future pressing on their shoulders. Obina sharpened his spear with fierce determination. Chisholm carved symbols into the wooden walls of their home. They were ready. But ready for what? One morning, the stranger approached Nkem. "There is a choice before you," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Follow me and learn the ways of power that can protect your people. Or refuse and watch your sanctuary burn." Nkem's gaze hardened. "Power that requires sacrifice is no power I seek." The stranger's eyes glinted. "Then prepare. The river's mercy is not endless." As the sun set behind the hills, Nkem stood again at the river's edge. She looked out at the flowing water, its voice now clearer, its promise alive. She thought of her sons, the people of Ogadama, and the journey yet to come. "The river speaks," she whispered, "and we must listen." The sun rose pale and trembling over Ogadi, casting long shadows across the village. A restless wind stirred the leaves of the Irako tree, and with it came a sense of finality, an unspoken warning that the days of waiting were over. Nkem stood at the riverbank, her heart heavy yet resolute. The river, now full and alive with the recent rains, shimmered beneath the morning light as if bearing witness to the destiny unfolding. Around her, the village was awake, but a quiet tension hung in the air. Every face bore the weight of what was to come. Her sons, Obina and Chisholm, approached, their footsteps steady, their eyes reflecting the fierce determination that had grown in them. They were no longer the children who once played by the river's edge, but young warriors shaped by loss, love, and the unyielding will to protect their people. "Mother," Obina said, voice low. "The stranger has spoken again. He says the old gods will not forgive us unless the twins are sacrificed." Chisholm's jaw clenched. "We've fought for this, our lives, our freedom. We won't go back to those days." Nkem nodded, swallowing the bitterness that rose in her throat. "No, we will not let fear dictate our fate anymore." The stranger had not left Ogadai. Instead, he had woven himself into the village's fabric, planting seeds of doubt and fear. Some elders, weary and frightened by the drought and the shadow dancer's terror, whispered that his words carried truth. That perhaps the old gods were indeed angered beyond mercy. Nkem had faced him several times, challenging his vision of power rooted in sacrifice and domination. But he was cunning, speaking in riddles and promises that tugged at the villagers' insecurities. Tonight the village would decide. That evening, beneath the glowing embers of a great fire, the people gathered once more under the Irako tree. The air was thick with the scent of smoke, sweat, and something darker, fear. Nkem stepped forward, her voice steady but fierce. "This is the moment our ancestors dreamed of, a moment where we choose who we are. Will we bow to old fears and kill the innocent, or will we stand as one, honoring the gifts we have been given?" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some eyes gleamed with hope, others flickered with doubt. The stranger emerged from the shadows, his cloak drawn tight, the serpents on his staff catching the firelight like living creatures. "You speak of gifts," he said, voice like a serpent's hiss. "But what gift is more dangerous than a curse? The twins bring imbalance. The gods demand balance." Nkem met his gaze without flinching. "Balance is not found in death," she said, "but in harmony." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The river, once a gentle whisper, roared like a beast awakened. The crowd gasped, stepping back as the water rose rapidly, flooding the riverbanks. From the depths came a figure, shimmering ethereal, twin spirits dancing on the surface of the flood. The twins, embodiments of light and shadow, life and death, joy and sorrow, moved with fluid grace, weaving a story older than time itself. Nkem stepped forward, voice lifted in a song taught to her by Ifeoma. "Spirit of the river, ancient and wise, hear our voices, our fears, our cries. We seek not to conquer, but to mend, to heal the wounds that never end." The spirits paused, their eyes, one bright as sun, the other dark as night, fixing on the villagers. The stranger recoiled, his serpent staff trembling. "Fools," he spat. "The gods do not forgive." But the river spirits began to swirl around Nkem and her sons, enveloping them in light and shadow. The villagers watched in awe as the twins' essence infused Obina and Chisholm, their forms glowing with power and peace. In that moment, the truth was revealed. The killing of twins had been born not from the gods, but from human jealousy and fear. The curse was not divine, it was man-made. The real power lay in unity, in embracing the balance that twins represented. Nkem fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "We were wrong," she whispered. "But now we know." The river's floodwaters receded, leaving behind fertile earth, renewed life. Ogadi would never be the same. The stranger vanished into the night, his purpose undone. Years later, the story of the last twins of Ubuluku became legend, a tale of courage, forgiveness, and rebirth. And the river, once silenced by fear, sang again, loud and clear, a voice for all time. Moral lesson. This powerful story explores several profound moral lessons, deeply woven into the fabric of the Ubuluku kingdom's struggle. The power of truth against fabricated fear. The most striking lesson is that truth, even when buried for generations, possesses an undeniable power to dismantle lies built on fear and injustice. The law of the twins was not a divine decree, but a fabricated narrative born from jealousy and used to consolidate power. Nkem's courage to defy this lie, simply by loving her children, gradually exposed the rotten foundation of the kingdom's oppressive traditions. The story explicitly states, the real curse was not in the children, but in the lies that built the kingdom. Courage in the face of oppression. One individual's courage can ignite a revolution. Nkem's initial defiance, driven by a mother's fierce love, served as a patient seed of truth. Her unwavering stand against the High Elder Odom and her refusal to conform to a cruel law inspired others, like Ife and eventually the entire village, to question, whisper, and ultimately rise. It teaches that true change often begins with the brave acts of those who refuse to be silenced. The evolution of tradition and community. The narrative highlights that not all traditions are beneficial, and true progress involves questioning and evolving harmful customs. Ubuluku's transformation shows how a community can shed poisonous traditions, even deeply rooted ones, in favor of compassion and inclusivity. The building of Ogadi, a sanctuary and fortress of spirit, symbolizes the creation of a new, more just society based on healing and acceptance, not fear. It's a testament to the idea that communities can be reborn through shared values and collective action. Forgiveness as a path to strength. The story subtly underscores the power of forgiveness as a transformative force. Nkem's decision to forgive Yuzo, the young trader, is presented not as a weakness but as a weapon, demonstrating that humanity and compassion, even in conflict, can strengthen a movement and expose the true nature of the enemy. Ultimately, the story of Ubuluku and Ogadi teaches that fear, disguised as righteousness, can be a powerful tool of oppression, but it is ultimately fragile against the relentless march of truth, fueled by courage, love, and a united community striving for a more humane world. If you enjoy our videos, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on our upcoming stories. Thank you.